In 1965, we went to the first meeting of the Atlantic Association of Young Political Leaders in Oxford. And when we got there, we found that almost all of our counterparts in these other countries knew a lot about American politics. They spoke multiple languages, they knew about different political systems, they were much more informed about international affairs and world affairs than we were. It was almost embarrassing. So one of the things that we decided was that we needed to find a way to ensure that young American politicians on their way up in the system had an opportunity to travel abroad and to be exposed to other young politicians from other countries. So the Russian program was the first program that really established, that idea.
I came into the White House in 1969 with Richard Nixon, and Spencer came over to see me and said, we're getting programs going, and we've got one to go to the Soviet Union, and this was in 1971. It was after Nixon made his China speech. He hadn't gone to China. And so there were 12 of us that headed for the big first trip to the Soviet Union. And I will never forget it, Spencer. It was really a formative trip of my life. We got to see our main rival and adversary in the Cold War face to face. We saw what they were like, where they were strong, where they were weak, how you could talk to them. And the truth was, even though I was a hardliner in the Cold War, I felt it was a good thing, an excellent thing to have our young people, young guys, go over there and see and begin to understand the system and the people and the rival, because bottom line, whatever we wanted, none of us wanted a war.
So many people who had experiences in the young political leader exchanges became not so young leaders, and then had an opportunity to work across the ocean and across the national divides on behalf of things that we had in common, peace and prosperity and a better relationship with one another. Extraordinary contribution I think the ACYPL has made.
I've had the great fortune to take, I think, 3 ACYPL trips. My first to Jordan, and then to Pakistan, and then Sri Lanka and Nepal.
My first trip was Egypt in 2005. My second trip was to Thailand.
I traveled to West Germany and East Germany in 1984.
I got to travel to Argentina,
China, Vietnam,
Japan in 1991,
India and Jordan,
India and Pakistan in 2007,
Australia,
Myanmar,
Cuba.
The big thing that struck me was that the people from both of our countries were simply that. They were people trying to earn a living, trying to raise their families, and there was a lot of hope for friendship and reaching across the aisles and learning about one another.
My major impressions from Egypt, strangely enough, being a Southern girl from Arkansas, I felt like I was actually at home. The people were so warm, and I realized in a culture that could not be more diametrically opposed, we had so much in common, far more in common than we did not.
What I always bring back from these trips is, if people could just talk more and spend time together and get across religious or other divisions, the world would be a much better place, and ACYPL is doing its little bit to try to accomplish that.
The thing I think I took from the experience is why the American Council of Young Political Leaders was set up, to share ideas, share stories, share interactions with other politicians and leaders in those countries.
I absolutely believe that the person-to-person exchanges are one of the best ways for Americans to see the world and understand it, and certainly to have the rest of the world come and see us and understand us.
I think we're at a moment in time where there's so much changing in the world and there are different reactions to it, that anything an organization can do to promote international understanding and relationships is tremendously important.
One of the nice things about the American Council of Young Political Leaders is that it's also an opportunity to travel in a bipartisan manner. It's important that Republicans travel with Democrats overseas in order to get a better understanding.
It's really an opportunity, because of my work, which is very partisan, to actually build and foster relationships with people on the other side of the aisle, and I really appreciate that.
I bonded with several of the Republicans. One of them I talked to quite a bit, just because it's one of those things where you drop those labels and you really become friends and get to know people as human beings.
And that's what really just makes me so passionate about this organization and want to give back so much to it, is those friendships, those relationships that are, so important. There's not that environment in today's world to build them unless it's a group like this.
I think during the last 50 years, we have truly exposed and prepared for leadership several generations of American politicians. It was one of those things that grew beyond what your greatest expectations were. It is extremely valuable. It's been a great success story, and it needs to be expanded and preserved and improved and funded as far as possible.